I would like to welcome Samson Mow today, at Exelion on Twitter, to our podcast, Relai Bitcoin Session. Very nice to have you here in the studio. I would never have dreamed of talking to you in person. That's cool. So maybe why you're here even?
Just for this. Thanks for inviting me, Julian. But there's a lot of meetings that we have with, I guess, local companies here. Mm-hmm. We met with Bitbox and a number of other ones. So there's a lot of Bitcoin business in Switzerland, right?
Yeah.
As you can tell, there's a lot of interest and a lot of people building on Bitcoin, which is great.
Is it the first time you visit like the crypto nation Switzerland?
I was here for a holiday a couple of years back. This is the first time here on business, though.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So obviously you work at Blockstream. For how long are you kind of as full-time professional, or you're not even full-time professional into Bitcoin, right? Because you're also into gaming still. But for how long are you actually working in and for Bitcoin?
I guess from 2015. So I started out working at an exchange, BTC China. And then after a couple of years, I decided to join Blockstream and focus more on building out infrastructure around Bitcoin. So working at an exchange is good. It was an exchange and mining pool. But I think there's much more interesting stuff happening at Blockstream. Like we're working on the Liquid network, the Lightning network. We have our mining operation. We have hardware wallets. We have the Blockstream satellite network too. So there's a lot of cool stuff to do when you're building and focusing on Bitcoin.
So basically, as long as you are in Bitcoin, you only worked for an exchange, like quickly, and then for the remainder, you worked for Blockstream.
Well, it's a couple of years still at the exchange.
Okay, yeah, cool. And before, like I just kind of watched your kind of public CV a little bit. So you studied business actually, but you were in technology ever since. So you. Do you see yourself more as a developer or a business guy or what?
Probably more business guy now. So I did web development a long time ago, and I'm still in the game industry. I started out in the game industry. I have my own game development studio called Pixelmatic. We're building an MMO called Infinite Fleet. So I'm trying to bridge the two things together, taking a lot of the tech that Blockstream has built and trying to apply it to games and the game industry. So for example, we have NFTs issued on Liquid network in Infinite Fleet, and we're replacing the game currency with a crypto asset issued on Liquid as well. And a part of that is to facilitate trade, peer-to-peer, player-to-player trade, where they can do atomic swaps on Liquid for like a spaceship and the game currency. So it's kind of bringing a lot of that Bitcoin-related tech over to a new industry and seeing what we can do, and offering something new to players. Because historically, most MMO games, they have their own currency and you can't really do anything with it. But I think with portability, you can do more interesting things. Like atomic swaps is one thing. You can create a multi-sig wallet, right, with your guildmates and store your funds in that. So I think there's a lot of interesting things. And plus, Lightning can be run on top of Liquid assets. So we could eventually stream the game currency to players over a Lightning network on top of the game currency.
That's super interesting. Like some of these aspects are definitely super like forward thinking. But like what's the big vision you have with Bitcoin in gaming or crypto in gaming? Like what are the how do you see the big interoperability? Like for example, you have currencies you can use then in different games, or you have like assets, digital assets that you buy that you then can use in different games, or like would it be more on different crypto assets, or even using Bitcoin in games, or like what's your in 10 years? What would be your vision how gaming looks like?
Well, I think you have to start from something more straightforward. So that's why we're going with a game currency issued on Liquid, because I think there's no barrier there. We can use things like Liquid Taxi to pay for transaction fees for the user. So we can obscure all that, the blockchain complexity part, right? So there's a lot of games out there that are trying to use blockchain tech and they want you to like go and buy their token first. But for us, it is really a game currency. It's not sold. You play the game, you earn the currency just like you would for World of Warcraft Gold. But you can take it out of the game because it is a crypto token. But I think the potential there is going towards that interoperability. So the publisher of Infinite Fleet is called Exordium. And right now, Exordium only has one game, Infinite Fleet, but down the road, it will have other titles, other MMO games. and we can have those other games, either they're developed in-house or externally, and we license them. But we can have them all using the Liquid ecosystem as an interoperability layer. So, like say we license another game, that game would be using INF, right? But if you made a game, we might publish it, and then you might have like your own game token in there, but it would be a different one, but it'd still be on Liquid. So you could still have atomic swaps between those game currencies. But I think the end goal is this kind of metaverse that everyone is talking about, and that's really just interoperability. But there are challenges, like on the business side. If I'm EA, right, I don't want you to buy a gun from a Ubisoft game and bring it to mine, because then that's a lost sale. So I think what we're going to have is probably these sort of mini federations. Like you might have interoperability between all Electronic Arts games, and then you might have interoperability between all Ubisoft games. But that would be a mid-step, and then possibly down the road you could have full interoperability between all ecosystems.
Interesting. So you're a very entrepreneurial guy, right? So you started gaming companies. You are now working for one of the biggest and most successful, probably, Bitcoin startups. Why are you kind of now more working as a chief strategy officer, right?
Yeah.
For this big startup instead of doing your own thing?
Well, I think Blockstream has a lot of engineering talent. We have a lot of mathematicians, researchers, cryptographers, and we're really pushing the cutting edge of all the tech. I think Blockstream's vision is a very long-term vision. It's more like tens of years, 20s of years. And like we invested in our Lightning R&D in 2015, well before the whole scalability debate kind of cropped up, right? The company was founded to build out sidechains, and I think all of these technologies are really to enable hyperbitcoinization. So you can say, you know, Liquid and Lightning enable hyperbitcoinization, because the future financial system is going to be using Bitcoin at its base. But Bitcoin as that base is not the only thing that's going to exist. You're going to still have companies, and companies will have stocks. You'll have, you know, games with digital currencies, and those things can be on a Bitcoin layer too. You can have stocks, equities, bonds, game tokens, NFTs, all on this layer that interoperates with Bitcoin, right? So when you settle on Liquid, you're settling for Bitcoin, because the native currency of Liquid is still Bitcoin. There's no ICO shitcoin token involved. So it's really just helping to accelerate Bitcoin's dominance in the world and having everyone use Bitcoin.
Why do you think it's going to be Bitcoin who will be the asset that is the base asset, not other fiat currencies like the US dollar, or not other cryptocurrencies like Ether or something? Why do you think it's going to be Bitcoin that everything else will be built on top of?
Because Bitcoin is the only decentralized thing. Like everything else is Dino, decentralized in name only. That's an abbreviation someone came up with, but it's pretty clever. It's catchy, right?
Who came up with this?
I'm not sure, but I saw people using it, and it's really great. But you know, a lot of those things like Ethereum, they set up a foundation in Zug or wherever, right? And you know, it's really just a decentralization theater. Like you can really just make a one-to-one comparison with Facebook and Libra, right? When Facebook was trying to launch Libra, they say it's going to be a foundation, and it's really Facebook, right? And I don't think they really went anywhere. But it's the same kind of thing for a lot of these altcoins, right? They set up a foundation. They say, yeah, it's that they're supporting development, but then they're always doing business development too, like trying to get their coin listed and all that stuff. So it's really more like a company or like a security, and they can change their monetary policy anytime they want. So let's just pick on Ethereum because you mentioned it. They recently did their EIP 15 something, right? I don't even know. But they're trying to be ultrasound money now, right? They're changing their monetary policy to reduce the supply.
Every 10 minutes.
Yeah, they're burning and trying to reduce supply to pump up the price. But the fact is, if you can change the monetary supply like that, you can change it the other way too. There's nothing stopping you. It's completely malleable. And it started with the DAO hack, right? They just said, okay, you stole from us. We're going to change the rules now to take our money back. But the moment you go down that path, it's all over, right? Like Ethereum Classic is the real Ethereum. The one right now is actually a fork made by the founders to get their money back. But anything that's so changeable and so mutable, that cannot be the future of money. It's got to be Bitcoin, which is immutable and really decentralized. Like there is no person in control of Bitcoin. You pick any altcoin project, it has basically a CEO, right? That's the guy running it.
But now the problem is a lot of retail investors or people who are not very familiar in depth with this matter are looking at coin market cap and they see, okay, Bitcoin is progressing well. Like the price is listing higher every year. That's cool. But like I see these other DeFi tokens who like Solana or now Shiba Inu or whatever who are like pumping up like crazy, and so why should I invest in Bitcoin when I can pick some of these altcoins and for short term make more money? Like what they are basically drawn from saving in Bitcoin, they are drawn to speculating in altcoins. And I wonder, like obviously then you tell them that the long-term savings technology is Bitcoin because it is scarce, it is decentralized, it is digital gold and everything, but like they are obviously drawn to the quick money. And so you know, for how long will this still, and there are interesting things going on in the DeFi space and tokenization and ICO. There are some interesting NFTs, there are some interesting cases. And so for how long will this go on, that on the short term Bitcoin will be outperformed by these crypto assets?
Well, people will always want to gamble, right? They always want to get massive returns, and a lot of those altcoin projects offer that, right? Like they're priced at next to nothing. You can put $100 in and you might double your money, and then you might lose it all again, right? I don't think that any of those things compete with Bitcoin, and having them all on like a coin market cap like site is a bit misleading in a way, but it's kind of also unavoidable, right? Like the whole value proposition of all the altcoins is to try to anchor to Bitcoin, right? To take elements of Bitcoin and market themselves as being better than Bitcoin in this small piece, or better than Bitcoin in this small piece, right? Like, we have faster block times, or we have bigger blocks, or we have, smart contracts or something like that. They try to compete on very small fragments of Bitcoin. But Bitcoin, you have to look at it holistically. It is just money, and it is programmable money. And you do have smart contracts in Bitcoin with multisig. You just don't have the cumbersome Ethereum-style smart contract written in JavaScript and embedded in the chain, which clogs it up when people use it, right? So it's really just, it just takes time, I think, for people to understand. Like, they have to go through the learning process. I think for most people entering the space, they don't necessarily start out at Bitcoin. They start out on some altcoin and they get wrecked. And then they figure out, okay, now it's really Bitcoin only. And I don't know, there's no end to it. Like if you look at CoinMarketCap or any of those like ranking sites, there's always new stuff. If you do a snapshot like right today and you come back in 5 years, most of the top 20 coins will be gone, right? And being around in this space long enough, you see that. So then none of the new things that come up, no matter how fancy they are, how well marketed they are, you kind of know.
It will be over soon. Like.
Yeah, it always goes away. But it's difficult. Like, you can't really save people. You have to let them figure it out themselves.
So you think they will keep coming, and even though we will have Lightning, Liquid, RGB, and all these kind of DeFi cases more and more on Bitcoin as well, there will always be all these other blockchains where people will gamble? For
at least the next 10, 20 years, I think. Okay. Or once we hit hyperbitcoinization, then it kind of blows away all those use cases, right? They're basically feature coins. They have a feature, and they market that feature. But if Bitcoin does become money for the world, people won't think of it as Bitcoin. It's just like, did you get your paycheck? Yeah, I got my paycheck. It's in Bitcoin, but you won't say Bitcoin. It's just, I got paid money. Bitcoin is just money. And at that point, I don't think it'll be possible to market yourself as the next Bitcoin, right? Because
all these features, do you think, will be on Bitcoin as well? So there will be no reason why I would use a feature coin on a weaker blockchain, on a centralized blockchain, when I can use it on the most secure, most open source, decentralized blockchain, which is Bitcoin.
Pretty much. I mean, Liquid and Lightning kind of consume every single use case of all those coins. Like anything you can do on those, you can pretty much do with Liquid and Lightning, and it's only going to accelerate and absorb more use cases, right? For example, NFTs. We have NFTs on the Liquid network, even though NFTs first were on Bitcoin with Counterparty. but you can do them on Liquid. And there's like a thriving art community on Veritoshi, an NFT platform that we helped sponsor. But they're making real art there. They're not just selling rocks and for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? They're real artists making artwork, and they're selling it for maybe $100. It's more realistic than that kind of speculation and gambling.
Yeah, that's interesting. And how long do you think this will take? And I mean, I think there's now a phase where there are these crypto gamblers that are making money or losing money, and if they make money, in the end they still see Bitcoin as the digital gold, right? I mean, if they 10x their Solana investment, then they probably want to put it into Bitcoin or maybe Ethereum, but probably more Bitcoin now.
Yeah, you don't even need to look at the traders or the gamblers, right? Just look at the coin projects. One of the first things that the Ethereum guys did after their ICO was they bought Bitcoin. I think Tezos is another ICO, right? And they hold mostly Bitcoin.
Really?
So all of these projects are really to get your Bitcoin. If you buy their token, you're helping them to buy Bitcoin. So I don't know, people don't always realize this, but again, when we get to that point of hyper-Bitcoinization, I don't think it will make sense to people. People will understand. Like a lot of that sales pitch is really like, this is a utility token. Pay $10,000 now, buy the utility token, and use it over the next couple of years. Well, first of all, there's nothing to use it with, right? Like most of these projects, if people buy that token, they probably don't know what to use it. Like they're not even using the service of that project. But it doesn't make sense as a model, right? Like if it is a utility token, let's say, I don't know, in Switzerland, do you need to pay for public transport?
Yep.
Like you buy a card, right?
Yep.
Would you buy like $100,000 of that public transportation card and use it over 10 years, or would you buy it as you need it?
Just buy it with money.
Yeah, so it's the same thing for the altcoin projects. You should just buy it as you need it, but you don't even need it really, right? It's just speculation. But to your other point, like when will this happen? Maybe 10 years, maybe sooner. Like a lot of things have accelerated, especially this year, that we've seen that I think a lot of Bitcoiners did not anticipate would happen so quickly. One was nation state Bitcoin adoption with El Salvador, right? I didn't think that would be...
Yeah, me neither. Yeah. This is crazy. And like it's going on with followers very fast as well. Like I thought like, okay, this may be like this niche case and then for another 2 years nothing will happen. No, it's El Salvador doing it and like 3 or 4 other South American countries like Paraguay, I think, or Uruguay and Cuba. And recently Brazil was very vocal. Brazil, this huge country, is very vocal about having exactly the same thing as well, like having a nation state.
You also have nation states mining Bitcoin too, right? So,
which ones?
I think Iran is mining.
Oh,
but
really?
like a lot of these things happen much faster than you think. And this year we also had a nation state attack on Bitcoin, right? You can look at the China clampdown on mining as an attack. They forced a lot of hash rate in China to shut down and just exit. So we've had two things already that I did not think would happen for another, 3 years maybe. But everything's happening at a much faster timescale, and we could reach hyper-Bitcoinization in 10 years. And I define hyper-Bitcoinization as the point at which you don't want fiat money anymore. You just have Bitcoin, you spend Bitcoin, you have a Bitcoin circular economy, so you're earning Bitcoin and spending Bitcoin. There's no need to exit that system and go back to dollars. It's kind of like, you wouldn't take seashells in exchange for Swiss francs, right? That's the kind of tipping point.
But do you think we will reach a point where we don't have any fiat money at all? Or do we have like Bitcoin as the savings asset and then fiat as the spending asset? Because you actually don't want to really spend Bitcoin for a coffee, right? You want to save it, but you would like to spend your USD that lose like 5 to 6% purchasing power a year.
Yeah, but if you're earning Bitcoin, like it goes to your wallet from your monthly pay, then you would spend it, right? Just like you need to spend dollars to sustain yourself, to buy food and rent or buy a house or whatever, right? I think the difficulty is people don't want to spend their Bitcoin now because you have to top it back up. If you spent it, you have to buy it again, and you're paying transaction fees everywhere, right? But at the point at which it becomes the base currency, then I think people would spend it, right? It's just money at that point. Save your money, of course. Don't buy plastic trinkets and junk, but buy food, buy coffee and water and whatever.
Wow. Interesting. I'm looking forward to that. And I think there are a lot of idols who are already on this path, like basically only exchange, like trying to earn and spend as much Bitcoin as they can, and then just only really exchange it back to fiat if they need to, if there's no other way, right? But these are kind of the remnants, the first pioneers, the early adopters, but they, I think more and more, especially when the solutions will be easier, like wallet apps or even whole Bitcoin apps with a debit card where you can spend your Bitcoin as well, and with more employers that pay your salary in Bitcoin as well. So the more and more these things will come, the more also normal people, not only the freaks, will start using the circular Bitcoin economy. Right?
But you can also leapfrog the credit cards, right? That whole system in El Salvador, people can just pay for coffee with Lightning. Like you don't need a credit card anymore. Just skip over that system.
Yeah, they did. They probably did because they didn't really have the credit card infrastructure as well.
Well, they don't have a lot of banking infrastructure.
Right.
Right now, more people have their national Bitcoin wallet installed than have bank accounts.
Yeah. It's like the African countries, for example, or I think a lot of Asian countries as well, basically leapfrogged from the whole telecom industry. They basically just went from having no real-time information system to the internet, right? They didn't have telecommunication.
Or they skipped over like the PC and went right to mobile.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's the interesting thing about emerging countries. But so how do you see the kind of layered scaling or the end, from a technical point of view, the end solution of Bitcoin? What happens a lot is the comparison between Bitcoin as a protocol layer and then layered scaling with Liquid, Lightning, RGB, and stuff like that. And then compare it to the internet, which also has a base protocol and then 7 layers, right? Do you agree with kind of that approach? Can we compare it like that? And what would the end solution, the end layered solution kind of tech stack look like?
It's hard to say, but I definitely think it is starting with Lightning and with Liquid. Obviously I believe in the layered approach, right? Like that was the crux of the Bitcoin scaling debate, right? Do we make the blocks bigger or do we scale with layers? And fortunately, we went out with layers instead of increasing the block size. There's a whole other can of worms that happen when you go down that. So the first thing is, if you make the blocks bigger, then people will find it harder to run a Bitcoin node, right? If you probably set up a Bitcoin node, right? You know, it takes time to synchronize. And if your blocks are, hundreds of megabytes in size, you may never be able to set up a Bitcoin node, right? Because the blockchain is always getting bigger. And at that point where a normal person cannot run a node, then Bitcoin kind of loses that decentralization. It'll just be run by people in Amazon or in Google Cloud, running it somewhere else, and then you kind of revert back to the legacy system where you're not able to be your own bank anymore. You have to rely on someone else to store your funds, right? The other part is it just becomes unwieldy you can't really scale that way. There's a dead end that you reach, right? You cannot keep making the blocks bigger infinitely. So the layered approach is really the only way to scale, and much like the internet, it is the right way to scale.
Interesting. And so, like, how many stacks do you think there will be? Will there be different stacks for different use cases? Like, for example, Liquid, as I understand, is more like B2B focused, even, like probably more for, as said, for issuing tokens or for moving big amounts of money from, for example, one exchange or one financial institution to another, whereas Lightning is more to buy your coffee, to send some tips on Twitter, and that's very small microtransactions, or maybe even kind of the streaming money use case to tip your content creators, your podcasters, whatever. And then there's RGB, as I understand it, for also like smart contracts, issuing DeFi use cases, also issuing tokens, stuff like that. So, can you help me understand? I actually really don't understand. So I would like to kind of pick your brain, like how will this end up with this different technology?
It's hard to say what the next layers are going to be. It could be that Lightning is all you need, because if you look at it, you can have Bitcoin at the base, and then you can have Lightning on top of Bitcoin. But you can have Bitcoin at the base, and then you have Liquid on top of that, and then Lightning networks on top of Liquid assets. So having that extra layer of the Liquid blockchain, you can actually do a lot more stuff with Lightning networks on top of these assets. And all of these Lightning assets are interoperable. So maybe that's all you need. I can't really imagine what's going to come next, because you can actually do a transmission of data with the Lightning network too. So Paulo Arduino, the CTO of Tether, he's working on a project called Desire. And it is really just data over Lightning networks, and with a payment module, of course, too, which is Lightning. But it just shows that you could potentially build a lot of things on what we have now, just the Lightning and Liquid layers.
Why do you think it doesn't really happen more often? Like, why are all these NFT projects on Ethereum and why aren't they on Liquid? Because you actually have issued an STO, I think, for one of your gaming companies on Liquid, and you said there are some NFTs on Liquid as well. So why are people and companies and startups not jumping on that? Why are they doing it on?
Like, it's a good question. I think there's a lot more NFTs on Ethereum because there's a lot more ICO money in Ethereum, and they're artists trying to make money, right? So
marketing power probably.
Well, if you print an ICO token, you have a lot of money, and you can do a lot of things with that. You can incentivize usage, and that's really what it is. Like, if you look at every single major blockchain project, they did their ICO, and then they pay people to use their stuff, right? It's kind of like a snake eating its own tail. And I don't think it's sustainable. Like, the community we have on Raretoshi, the Liquid NFT site, is much more active, and it's much more organic, much like Bitcoin, right? It's like organic growth, not, if you look at the big Ethereum NFT use case, it's the Beeple thing for $69 million, right? But how did they sell for $69 million? That guy, he did like an ICO consortium to buy NFTs. So he raised money through an ICO to buy an NFT. So that's where that money came from, right? So it's still that whole ICO money ecosystem. I don't think it's sustainable. We'll see, but I don't think in the long run it's really going to sustain itself or survive. And it will probably be something more organic that subsists over time, right? Like,
I think so too. Like, the serious projects who really value an organic, like good, active, sustainable community and security. And open source and decentralization and all that kind of, and all the advantages that come with it, they will move to Bitcoin at sooner rather sooner than later. And then obviously I think there will always be like gamblers and speculators and like all these snake oil salespeople. They will always probably find some stupid people as well to do pyramid schemes with and to sell hot air on these other blockchains probably, but I think it will move slowly but steadily to Bitcoin more.
I think so. Yeah.
Interesting. It's going to be interesting how it plays out. Also, like the big investors, if you look at the big banks, for example, like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Morgan Stanley, all of them are now basically in Deutsche Bank, basically now issuing research about Bitcoin, also investing in Bitcoin. BlackRock recently invested in Bitcoin and Bitcoin infrastructure, like mining companies. And then nation states adopting Bitcoin. Yeah. You don't hear anything about Ethereum or DeFi or other coins there, right? So like the big players seem to kind of have figured it out. So either they figured out that Bitcoin is more valuable than the others, or they basically don't really know about these other coins. But that, I think, is not the problem. I mean, most likely they did their research on the whole crypto space.
Yeah, I think few institutions are going to invest in DeFi projects because it's just like governance tokens on top of governance tokens on top of governance tokens. And I don't know, if you're a serious investor, you can't really look at that and see the value. It's like a house of cards built on another house of cards, right? Like you're literally investing in something to get their governance token, to stake it with another thing to get another governance token, right? So I can't see that working out. Yeah.
And also from a risk perspective, I mean, for these institutional investors and nation states, they think more long term, and then they think a lot about risk, like what are the big risks. And already Bitcoin for them is an alternative asset so far now. It's an emerging savings technology, but it is right now at this stage very risky for them, and they want to limit the risk. But for Bitcoin, if it makes it to this digital gold, the upside is way bigger than the downside. So if they put 1%, 2% of their portfolio into Bitcoin, then the downside is 1 to 2%. The upside might be huge, right? So there's an asymmetric risk-return profile, which they like. But then to go even riskier for a potentially way smaller, maybe faster, but way smaller return, I think that's not, from a pure investor perspective, that's not going to be the thing that triggers them.
Well, I think they know that Bitcoin is the decentralized money, right? Everything else is really a company. So as a nation state, why would you buy some company's token to, I don't know.
Might as well buy Facebook stocks, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like I think there's not a real risk in holding Bitcoin. It's only volatile and risky if you look at it on a short time horizon, right? But if you're a nation state, you should not be looking at something like, on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis. You should be looking at it on a decade's time horizon. If you look at Bitcoin on a decades-long time horizon, it's just like this, right?
Yeah. Higher lows every year, right?
Yeah.
There's a graphic I saw the other day. It's very impressive. I think there was, in the last 10 years, there was 1 year that was lower, like the lowest low was a little bit lower than the year before, maybe 20% or something. Yeah. But all the other years, it was substantially higher.
Yeah.
That's really impressive, actually.
But
already, if you look at it from a year-to-year perspective.
But it's also possible we will never see a crash. Like Bitcoin will just keep on going up. And that is really a factor of the money printing, right? If you look at the money printing in the US and Canada too, it's just parabolic. Like because example in Canada, we printed more money in the last year than in the past 40 years. It's just ridiculous, right? Yeah. So if you look at all the central banks printing money, maybe Bitcoin just never crashes again. There's never a Bitcoin winter anymore. This
will fuel hyper-Bitcoinization, obviously, as well, together with nation states coming in, because every additional nation state that are coming in, especially like big ones like Brazil, is increasing the pressure on all the other nation states, right? Because they see them getting richer and richer, basically, and they just try to shrink or decrease their debts with issuing more money, but they feel like, oh, I don't even save. Like I just make my debt smaller, but I don't make my wealth bigger. Yeah. And all the others are actually storing their value in a currency that are going up. Same with companies, like the macro strategies of this world who are investing billions in Bitcoin now and just sitting back and like, you guys, this will probably trigger a movement or a dynamic that is going into the direction of hyper-Bitcoinization.
Yeah. Like there was a lot of FUD in El Salvador when they first launched their Chivo wallet, right? They said, everyone's lost money now if you got the $30 from the government. But now with Bitcoin at 50, 54, 55K, they're all up, right? And if Bitcoin keeps on going up, then you just educated an entire nation state about the value of sound money and the importance of saving your wealth, right? And I think the big exodus or the big spur for Bitcoin adoption is going to come from the countries that need it the most. It's not going to be from the wealthy nations. It's going to be from the nations that are subject to the inflation from the U.S. because they're using the U.S. dollar, right? They get no benefit from using the U.S. dollar because there's no infrastructure bill giving them money, right? They just have their wealth eroded. But it's probably going to come from those regions. But I think also in the more developed nations, like the wealthier nations, you also will see it. It's just slower. Like in Switzerland, you have negative interest, right?
Yeah.
If you put your francs in the bank, you're losing 1%.
Listen to that. We have kind of the lowest inflation rate probably, but still between 1.5 up to 2%, depending on the year. Still, there is inflation. So you lose purchasing power every year. Yeah. And then now you have negative interest rates that went down from like up, you didn't pay anything up to 1 million. So already you don't get any positive interest rates anymore. It's ridiculous. Like you get 0.00001% per year on your savings, which is ridiculous. It's nothing. And then we had negative interest rates from like 1 million or 2 million on. So for most people, it's okay. They don't care. But now this, within a couple of years, went down to 100K. So already, and most people in Switzerland who are in their 30s, 40s, they have 100K on their bank account usually, and then you lose between 1.75 and 1%. So usually, like if you have more than 100K, you pay 1% of this. Plus you have inflation, and that's in Switzerland, which was one of the best financial systems probably in the world. So I don't want to even think about living in an Eastern European country, for example, where they have huge inflation rates and they have obviously negative interest rates as well. And like,
so the thing here is like, negative interest rates don't work anymore. You can buy Bitcoin. You can opt out of the system and just buy Bitcoin. Like, central banks are already obsolete. They just don't really know it. Like with the opportunity, the choice to go to Bitcoin, why would you hold that fiat money? It just makes no sense.
At least, why would you hold more than 100K?
Yeah. Just
treat
it like a utility token.
Yeah.
Just get as much francs as you need when you need it.
Exactly.
And keep the rest in Bitcoin.
Exactly. So that's interesting. So this whole hyper-Bitcoinization thesis really makes a lot of sense to me, speaking to you. So, and Blockstream is trying to really work towards this and help support this in any way. So what are the biggest fields where you support this? Obviously, you produce software like wallets, you contribute to open source software like Liquid, Bitcoin itself, I think.
We contribute to Bitcoin as well.
And Lightning. And then you also started mining, which is interesting, and also satellite. Satellite networks, which is probably to kind of make the network redundant if anything happens to the internet, maybe. Or like, can you quickly maybe elaborate on these fields? What are you doing there?
So I would say like everything that Blockstream is doing is to augment Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is a large ecosystem. Like you're saying, there is mining, there are nodes, there's software, there's the protocol, there's the layer 2 stuff. We have our fingers in every single pot. We're working on all of this, right? We are contributing to Bitcoin core development. We have developers that work on Taproot, all the different layer 2 things. We're also heavily involved, and everything we're doing is open source too, much like the Jade wallet, right?
Everything.
The Jade wallet is also fully open source, both the software and the hardware. So you can get you can get an M5 stack. It's the same chip and board as the Jade, and you can download the software or compile it, run it on another device that you don't buy from us. So basically, we're trying to empower everybody by giving away all this Bitcoin-related software, even the satellite stuff, right? That's all open source as well. So if you wanted, you could set up your own satellite network. But at the end of the day, it's really just augmenting Bitcoin. So like you said, the satellite network prevents network splits. Mining, one of the goals for us to do mining was to give access to mining to people that may otherwise not be able to.
So will it be a mining pool?
We're working on something too.
Okay.
But the hosting operation is our primary thing right now. So when we launched it, we hosted Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn. We have Fidelity, but we're just getting big institutions and individuals into Bitcoin mining, because to set up your own mining operation, it's difficult.
Reid Hoffman is so you basically have a mining pool with very selected people and
mining
institutions.
facility.
Mining facility. So Reid Hoffman is using you as a partner for doing mining for himself.
Yeah, he's one of our first customers.
I didn't even know he's a Bitcoiner actually.
Yeah, he is a Bitcoiner.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. There's a lot of Bitcoiners that don't always go on podcasts and talk about Bitcoin. They just have Bitcoin, right?
We need to have him on here.
Yeah. But giving access to mining is definitely very important, because we see this year too, where centralization gets you, right? You can have a nation state crackdown and you have a sudden outage or drop in hash rate. Unfortunately, we weathered that really well. But in theory, if there's a lot of hash rate in one place, like China, it turned out to be 30-ish%, maybe 40 actually, less than people were expecting. But let's say you had like 70% and it all shut off one day, then the block times will get very long until we have a difficulty readjustment, right? And that will be disruptive to the network. So it's better that Bitcoin mining is really distributed everywhere, like all over the world in different countries, geopolitically and geographically.
Absolutely. What's the whole business case though behind it if you're basically giving everything away? If you don't, so it's all open source. Obviously, I think you do charge probably fees and stuff, but what's the big business case that allowed you to become a unicorn? Because in the end, you just raised 210 million from basically traditional, like just venture capital.
Yeah, we
companies,
raised from
right? They wanna make profit in the end as well. So right, in that regard, you're a traditional startup. What was the business case that convinced all these investors?
Well, I guess our main revenue driver right now is our own mining operations. Those are very profitable, and they became even more profitable after the China shutdown, right? We have 300 megawatts between Canada and the US, and we're expanding very rapidly too. We have another site secured. I guess the ROI is on both the software and the mining side. So on the software side, we're building financial products on top of Liquid. So the first one that people have exposure to is the Blockstream mining note. So that is a Luxembourg securitization vehicle where we're tokenizing our hash rate. So it is really a security. It has an ISIN. We'll have an ISIN, and it is 2,000 terahash per Blockstream mining note, per BMN. So you can actually get this liquid token and trade it on OTC markets, and it'll be listed on crypto securities exchanges down the road too. So that's
and it will pay you a yield.
Well, you're mining Bitcoin with it actually. So every Blockstream mining node is mining Bitcoin. So when you buy the node, it's all hash rate. But then as we start mining, that hash rate becomes Bitcoin at the end of the 3-year term and is paid out.
Oh, nice.
So you're a miner. If you're holding the token, you're really a miner.
Nice. And what will be the entry barrier?
You just have to be a qualified investor and be able to afford it. So one BMN at launch was 200,000 euros.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's sort of like accredited investor. Yeah.
But very interesting. Cool. Oh man. And so the whole mining, how can you be so profitable? So basically, mining is taking care of 70 to 80% of your income.
It's very profitable, but we have also a suite of financial products that we are working on. So we acquired a hedge fund called Adamant Capital, and we're planning to offer basically financial products like a Bitcoin Alpha Fund. You can invest Bitcoin and generate a return on your Bitcoin in Bitcoin.
How did you achieve to become so profitable with the mining? Like where do you get the kind of the latest equipment? You always need the most efficient mining rigs, probably, right? And then where do you get the cheap energy from?
Well, you have to source it. You have to find the cheap energy, and that is kind of a barrier. Like most people, mining at home is profitable right now, but typically in like bear markets, it's not profitable to mine at home because electricity cost is higher in your home. So you need to go and source cheap electricity, in Canada where you have hydropower, or in the US too. But it's really just finding that, building a facility, having efficient operations, and having the best hardware, so the best ASICs. And I think the key to mining, to being a profitable miner, is to get into mining when people think Bitcoin is dying, right? It's similar to buying Bitcoin. Mining is sort of like a futures on Bitcoin, right? You're buying the miner at a certain time, and you'll recover the cost of the miner over a year, roughly, usually. But if you buy the hardware when it's a down market, you're probably going to get in, right? And also, you'll have better luck negotiating for electricity when it's a down market. Because when it's hot, everyone wants their cut. Right. So if you're negotiating with the landlord saying, I want to lease your facility, I want your power, they'll say, we'll charge you a lot.
So interesting. But what kind of investors did invest now in these 210 million round? Were it like VCs who want to see an exit in 5 years, like traditional? Or are there a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts who just invest in it because they have a lot of Bitcoin and they want to see Bitcoin succeed in the next 10 to 20 years, and that's why they invest in you as an infrastructure provider?
Yeah, I think so. So it's a bit of both. Our B round was Bitfinex and Baillie Gifford. So Baillie Gifford is a Scottish investment firm, and they have very long time horizons for their investments. So their thesis is more focused on the liquid side. Actually, I think both of them are interested in the liquid side, the reformation of capital markets using liquid technology. But for Baillie Gifford, I think security tokens is the key thing that they saw in Blockstream that we're building. Having a stable technology that enables privacy. So Liquid has confidential transactions. So it's the perfect building block to create this new financial system on top of Bitcoin. And they really believe in the long-term potential of the Liquid network and tokenization of real-world assets, linking them to Bitcoin settlement. For Bitfinex, I think it's really supporting a lot of Bitcoin stuff, like supporting the protocol development we do on Bitcoin and Lightning, supporting the Liquid network, and our securitization stuff too. So I think for Bitfinex, Paulo, the CTO, he's very much a Bitcoiner at heart, right? He's trying to do things that are good for Bitcoin. Like they pushed a lot for Liquid adoption early on, and it was hard for us to get Liquid adoption because we didn't have an ICO. So if you look at all the chains, they typically can incentivize usage. We can't really do that. But I think he understands the potential of technology, and he issued USDT Liquid on Liquid, Tether on Liquid. And they supported it at their exchange. Like they're always the first to adopt a lot of the cutting edge technology, like Lightning. They're one of the first exchanges to support Lightning deposits, right? And I think they're seeing massive volumes on Lightning as well as Liquid now. So all of their early faith in Layer 2 scaling is really paying off and really paving the way for everyone else. Like more exchanges now are integrating Lightning and Liquid after seeing that it works really well.
That's very cool to have such a partner on board as well, to have always an early case that then you can basically go out and convince others to follow, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Man, it was really fascinating. Is there anything else you wanna say? Or I don't want to steal more time of you it was really interesting. Thank you very much for being here.
Glad to chat. I guess my question is, when is Relai going to support Liquid?
So we actually are very young still. So a little bit more than a year. We launched July last year with very little money. So now we had good first traction in mainly Switzerland and Germany, but Europe as a whole. So we have app downloads in every European country, and now we took some money from venture capitalists to really set the basics first, right? We had to work a lot on our infrastructure because we're basically an MVP, right? And we worked with an external broker. So we really from end of October, we will launch what we call Relai 2.0, which is has a refreshed branding, a better UX UI, a way more stable tech infrastructure, we will have our own broker license and our own broker all in house. And so this is basically building the stability or the basics to then kind of scale and get into other Bitcoin use cases. So obviously then next year, what we will be more focusing on is still front-end UX UI is very important for us because we are talking to newbies who don't really know what Liquid is and Lightning and stuff. But also obviously then exploring kind of more use cases like DeFi, NFT, smart contracts and stuff on Bitcoin. And that's where, and obviously cheaper transactions, streaming money. So a big thing is DCA for us. So people can start with $10 a week and DCA, like having a savings plan into Bitcoin with us. Obviously, this will not be sustainable forever on the main chain. Right now it works, but it will not work forever. And so there we would like to enable like people even hourly, like having 10 cents an hour a savings plan, for example, via Lightning, or DeFi stuff like maybe lending or lending Bitcoin and get some the return interest via Liquid, for example. So stuff like that we will definitely we'll definitely work towards, and also to collaborate hopefully with like Blockstream and Lightning Labs. We have very good contacts there as well. We're working with Christian Decker as well for Lightning use cases, who's also obviously at Blockstream.
Yeah, he's here.
He was here actually in the podcast as well. Yeah, we had him before, and he's working here in Zurich somewhere, I think. Yeah, exactly. So definitely that's going to be on our roadmap, but for next year. We still have some basic work to do now, building the community, but step by step.
Yeah, but I think the Bitcoin focus is important to not get distracted by all these different things.
That was something I actually and we had to learn early on, and we really also didn't take investors on that didn't share this alignment or this vision, which was hard because most of the fintech investors are coming and I'm giving all these millions, but please build this shitcoin casino because there's so much volume. They only see the volume. I mean, Coinbase, for example, is making like 70% of their volume with shitcoins. Yeah. And so if this is the only goal, short-term profit, then it's hard, right? So we had to find the right investors who buy in our long-term Bitcoin-only vision, which we found now. And that's what we need to defend, and we now are very strong in this, bought in very strong in this Bitcoin-only strategy now.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Last question that I always try to get out of my podcast guest: how much of your total wealth is in Bitcoin?
I don't know. I lost everything in a boating accident.
Everything. Damn.
Everything.
Just could buy your coffee, but like even the percentage of how much you would think would make sense to have in Bitcoin. Is it already can we already with sleep well with having 99% in Bitcoin, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it depends on each individual, right? Like what is your risk? I would say if you're just a newbie and you're just starting out, 10% is good, right? Like 10% won't kill you if Bitcoin crashes, but I don't think it might dip a bit, but it'll never go to zero, right? The risk is really not having any Bitcoin, I think.
The risk is bigger not to have any Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right? Awesome, man. That's a great end word. Thank you very much for being here, Samson. It was really a pleasure.
Yes, likewise.